The Straw Hat Pirates are currently drifting in the New World Seas. This is the time when the whole gang relaxes and works on their personal interests. With Nami, she was engrossed in a pile of colorful swimsuits. Sanji is busy cooking in the kitchen. Robin sat leisurely reading a book. While Luffy and Zoro rested, Frankie, Usopp, Chopper, and Brook focused on ship maintenance. First, the Shark submarine. After circling under the sea, it seems to be operating normally. Next up is the Mini Mary. Brook is the only one who doesn't know anything about the Going Merry, so he's a little curious about it. That's why Usopp decided to tell his crewmate about the ship in detail. Going Merry was made in Usopp's hometown Syrup Village and was given to the Straw Hats by Lady Kaya after their victory over the Kuro pirates. This was a magnificent ship with 3 masts and was steered by a rudder at the rear, completely different from the group's original crude wooden boat. Usopp was the one who drew the official pirate flag for the Merry after witnessing the silly captain's artistic talent. Merry accompanied the Straw Hat crew on a long journey through many hardships and challenges with rookie pirates from the East Sea. Crossing the inverted mountain to head straight into the Grand Line, the Merry collided with the giant whale Laboon. As a result, Luffy's favorite seat was instantly broken. Patching up the makeshift ship, the Straw Hats finally arrived at the Grand Line. Passing Little Garden Island, where there are 2 giant warriors, the gang has arrived at the winter island called Drum. The first member to join this sea is the reindeer Tony Chopper. After a long journey with the Straw Hats, Vivi decided to stay in her hometown of Alabasta and had a tearful farewell to her friends. The next person to board the Going Merry was Nico Robin. The next goal of the Straw Hats' journey was to set foot on the island in the sky. Thanks to being equipped with wings, the Going Merry successfully brought the young pirates to the paradise island of Skypiea. At this point, Usopp was filled with tears and unable to speak. Leaving Skypiea after the battle with God Enel, the Going Merry was heavily damaged. The crew decided to head to Water 7 Island, an island famous for its shipyards. It seemed like everything would be as simple as weaving a basket, but no. The experts there confirmed that the Going Merry could no longer be repaired. Money was no longer an issue. It was best for the Straw Hats to buy another ship before the Merry really broke down. However, Luffy firmly opposed this idea. He would never abandon the ship that had been with him for so long. In another development, while carrying 2 suitcases of money in his hands, Usopp was attacked by Frankie's subordinates. The entire amount of 200 million belly to repair the ship was blatantly stolen. Seeing their teammates being bullied, Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, and Chopper were extremely angry. The 4 of them decided to go to Frankie's house to avenge Usopp. With overwhelming power, Frankie's subordinates were quickly defeated by Luffy's group. Their base was also destroyed shortly after. On the other hand, Luffy also changed his original decision. This will be the time for him to say goodbye to Going Merry. Usopp felt very sorry for his negligence. However, Luffy was no longer too concerned about money. He wanted to change to a better new ship and leave Merry here. Before the captain's sudden announcement, Usopp was extremely confused. For him, Going Merry is not only a means of transportation, but also a close friend. The gunner firmly opposed Luffy's decision. That's why the two had an argument. It was very difficult for Luffy to make this decision. Faced with his teammates' criticism, Luffy could no longer keep his composure. No matter how many times the captain explained, Usopp still objected, and at the same time he felt extremely disappointed in Luffy. Meanwhile, Luffy accidentally kicked Usopp out of the crew. Usopp knew this would happen sooner or later. He admitted that he could not keep up with the strength of the crew. If Luffy could easily throw away Merry like that, then Usopp would definitely be nothing. Immediately after that, Usopp decided to leave the ship despite everyone's objections. Not only that, he also challenged Captain Luffy to take back the Going Merry. Having no other choice, Luffy was forced to agree to the challenge. The duel took place at 10 p.m. Luffy asked the rest not to interfere. Knowing the captain's strength, Usopp prepared very carefully. The first person to rush forward was Luffy. Usopp pretended to vomit blood with a pile of tomatoes to distract Luffy. Next, the gunner shot rotten eggs at Luffy. Next, a super tear gas bullet into his mouth. Usopp also prepared a pile of iron spikes at Luffy's feet, which caused the rubber man to be in great pain. Not stopping there, Usopp continued to shoot darts to lure Luffy to the gas belt. Immediately after, Usopp's bullet was fired, causing Luffy to be immediately caught in the explosion. Witnessing the civil war between Luffy and Usopp, not only the Straw Hat crew, but also the Going Merry had to cry. After a while of gaining control, Usopp was finally hit by Luffy. Hit by a powerful bazooka punch, Usopp immediately collapsed. Winning the final victory, Luffy chose to leave Going Merry to Usopp. He would buy a new ship and continue sailing. Chopper really wanted to run out to help Usopp, but was stopped by Sanji. Doing so would only make Usopp feel more uncomfortable. Zoro understood Luffy's feelings very well. At this time, if he was not decisive, the crew's trust in him would be lost. After that, everyone packed up and left the Going Merry and went to look for a new ship. On the other hand, Usopp was taken to Franky's warehouse under the bridge to avoid the rising tide. Knowing the story of the Straw Hats, Franky was very emotional. As a shipbuilding expert, Franky knew that the Going Merry could no longer continue to operate. He decided to destroy the ship for Usopp. Seeing that Usopp was still stubborn, Franky threw him into the water to see the ship's backbone. It was indeed severely damaged beyond repair. In fact, Usopp had known that Merry was broken long ago in Skypiea. He had seen with his own eyes the Merry's avatar repairing itself. At the same time, CP9 agents were present to arrest Franky, the criminal holding the Pluton blueprint. Franky intended to resist, but was immediately defeated by Rob Lucci. On the other hand, the square-nosed Kaku let the Going Merry drift out to sea, while Usopp was helpless. In addition to Merry's story, Robin suddenly disappeared mysteriously. Her kidnappers were none other than the spies of the world government. Franky and Usopp were also quickly escorted onto the train, heading to the Enies Lobby Court of Justice. Upon receiving this news, a temporary alliance between the Straw Hats and the residents of Water 7 was formed, and they quickly set out to rescue their teammate. Usopp was lucky to escape and disguised himself as the king of Archer Shogaking. Despite his best efforts, he and Sanji still could not bring Robin back. Finally, the Straw Hats reached the judicial island of Enies Lobby. Here, Luffy had to confront the spy Blueno. To defeat him, Luffy decided to use the skill he had just learned, which was Gear Second. This state helps Luffy increase his speed and damage many times over. Even though he was proficient in the 6 forms, Blueno still couldn't keep up with Luffy. Confident in his defensive ability, the CP9 agent decided to take the full brunt of his opponent's attack. However, he overestimated himself and was quickly defeated. Not wanting the Straw Hats to be in danger, Robin asked Luffy to return immediately. The most elite agents of CP9 gathered in one place. They definitely won't let Luffy save his crewmate. Luffy doesn't care if Robin wants to die or not, he will bring Robin home at all costs. The remaining members of the Straw Hat crew quickly arrived. This surprised the CP9 agents. 20 years ago, Robin's hometown was wiped out by a single Buster Call attack. That's why she felt so scared when facing it. Today, Robin would rather die than let his teammates be in danger. Knowing that Robin's enemy is the world government, Luffy immediately ordered Soaking to burn their flag. This made Robin and the CP9 agents unable to believe their eyes. Luffy doesn't care who the enemy is, all he wants is for Robin to be honest with herself. In the end, Robin had to admit that she still wanted to live and sail with everyone. Of course, Spandam didn't let Robin go that easily. He and Rob Lucci immediately took her to the gates of justice to hand her over to the Navy. Seeing that, Luffy immediately chased after her, determined to get his crewmate back. On the other hand, the remaining members of the Straw Hats were forced to fight the assassins to retrieve the key to open the handcuffs. Zoro and Usopp's opponents were Kaku and Jabra. Chopper had to fight Kumadori. Sanji quickly lost to Khalifa, so Nami had to fight for him. Franky also sided with the Straw Hats. His opponent this time was Fukaru. Seeing Luffy was almost chasing, Spandam was extremely scared. Rob Lucci decided to stop Luffy to buy time for his superiors to leave. Outside, Franky and Fukaru had a funny show of strength. In the end, the winner was still the Iron Man Franky. On the other hand, the spy Kumadori had much more overwhelming power than Chopper. To protect his beloved teammate, he had to risk his life to use the third rumble balls. This caused Chopper to turn into a giant monster version that lost its mind. In return, the strength of the Straw Hat's doctor will now increase many times. With just a few basic blows, the spy Kumadori was on the floor. At the same time, Nami was also struggling with the female spy Khalifa. Thanks to the weather stick in her hand, the navigator suddenly created a mutation and called out a wave of lightning that left the opponent unable to react. After chasing Robin for a while, Luffy finally encountered the strongest spy, Rob Lucci. The two immediately rushed into a duel without any mercy on Zoro's side. The guy was being overwhelmed by the giraffe Kaku and caused countless injuries. Thinking that enduring that much was enough, the Straw Hat swordsman decided to launch his strongest move, Asura, with 3 heads behind his hands. Zoro easily neutralized Kaku's attack and defeated him immediately. On the other front, Sanji replaced Usopp to fight the Wolf Jabra. Similar to Zoro, Sanji also struggled to fight this spy and was forced to unleash his strongest attack. With his final flaming foot, the chef of the Straw Hat crew won and got the key to open the handcuffs. At the same time, Frankie also ran to Luffy's place. Rob Lucci possessed such destructive power that Luffy was constantly lying on the floor. Frankie was no exception to him. In this situation, Luffy was forced to use Gear Second to punch the enemy away. However, Rob Lucci had also transformed into a leopard hybrid. He was determined not to let anyone pass through the door he was protecting. However, in the end, Rob Lucci could not hold back the Iron Man because Luffy's speed and strength had reached a new level. On the other hand, Spandam was dragging Robin to the gates of justice in an extremely brutal way. She was in great pain but could do nothing with her hands locked. Suddenly, Spandam was hit by a bullet and fell to the ground. The surrounding Marines were also quickly shot down. Robin was extremely moved because the person who did this was the super sniper Soaking. It turned out that Usopp was standing on top of the Tower of Justice to rescue his teammate. He could snipe at an extremely long distance, which made it impossible for the Marines to reach. Seizing the opportunity, Robin ran quickly in the opposite direction. Seeing that, Spandam immediately ordered his subordinates to execute her right there. Luckily, Frankie appeared in time and shielded the archaeologist of the Straw Hats with his iron body. Frankie was unharmed by the enemy's bullets. At the same time, Usopp also shot a cloth bag containing the keys that the crew collected at the Iron Man. Robin was freed from the sea stone shackles. Robin was very grateful to Frankie and her teammates. She would thank them after leaving this place. However, the Buster Call had been executed. A series of artillery shells were being fired towards the judicial island of Enies Lobby. Seeing this, Robin and Frankie decided to hijack an enemy ship to escape. At this time, Nami and Chopper were moving with Kokoro and her granddaughter to the assembly point. The Navy warships were approaching. The goal was to destroy the Straw Hat pirates, capture Nico Robin, and destroy everything on Enies Lobby. In this situation, Robin kept trembling in fear. Spandam immediately used the elephant sword with the intention of attacking her. Frankie continued to attack. The guy easily stopped the elephant and scared it into shrinking its trunk. Frankie himself also had a grudge against Spandam. Taking this opportunity, he crushed the bastard in front of him with the weapon he was proud of. The duel between Luffy and Rob Lucci was still going on dramatically. The two sides took turns gaining the advantage and gradually came to an end. After many efforts, the Straw Hats finally gathered and stole a Navy ship. What needs to be done now is to wait for Luffy to appear, and then the whole group will run away from here. To deal with the assassin, Luffy was forced to use his trump card, Gear Third. Its power has caused Rob Lucci to be severely damaged. In return, Luffy's body will also shrink for a short time. Returning to his original form, Luffy continues to use Gear Second and fight with Rob Lucci once again. Outside, the entire Enies Lobby was surrounded by a sea of fire. The bridge connecting the two towers was also shot down shortly after. Everyone outside could clearly see the battle between Luffy and Rob Lucci. Seeing this, the members of the Straw Hat Pirates tried their best to encourage the captain to increase his power. And then 200 elite Marines and the Navy Vice Admirals approached the Straw Hat Pirates. The battle between the two sides continued with a lot of chaos. Despite being buffed with more power, that was not enough for Luffy to defeat Rob Lucci. Seeing the captain fall, Usopp decided to take off the soaking mask. Then the gunner challenged Rob Lucci with the aim of awakening Luffy's hidden power. Thanks to those inspirational words, Luffy was finally able to continue to stand up and fight. And then the two continued to punch each other wildly with powerful blows. However, Rob Lucci locked Luffy with his tail and delivered a fatal blow that gradually made him lose consciousness. Not accepting defeat here, Luffy rose up with extreme anger. The rubber boy immediately unleashed a series of attacks on the assassin, leaving him no time to react. Due to his exhaustion, Rob Lucci could not avoid any of Luffy's powerful punches. That's why he was the final loser and lay unconscious on the floor. His teammates were extremely happy with the captain's glorious victory. Due to overusing Gear Second, Luffy could no longer move. Having no other choice, the Straw Hats decided to move the ship to Luffy's location. Unfortunately, the Navy realized their intentions and immediately destroyed the battleship. Not stopping there, they also planned to shoot to finish Luffy off right away. It seemed like everything would end here, then a strange yet familiar sound rang out. Seeing hope, Usopp immediately asked Robin to push Luffy into the water. Trusting his teammate, Robin immediately followed. The members of the Straw Hat crew also jumped into the sea one by one, without hesitation. It turned out that by some miraculous way, Going Merry had reached Enies Lobby to rescue his friends. Everyone was extremely happy at the unexpected appearance of the ship. Everyone has gathered, now let's leave here together. Not letting the Straw Hats escape, Spandam ordered his subordinates to surround and fire to destroy the Going Merry. However, for unknown reasons, the warships kept missing and destroying each other. It turned out that Sanji had sneaked into the control room and pulled the lever to close the door of justice. This created whirlpools that prevented the Navy ships from moving as they wished. As for the Straw Hats, with her excellent navigational skills, Nami guided the Going Merry, helping it navigate the whirlpools with ease. The cannonballs fired at them were easily neutralized by the crew. Additionally, Robin also punished the bastard Spandam by breaking his joints. Thanks to Frankie, the Going Merry was finally shot straight into the air and lost its enemies. Witnessing the spectacular escape of the Straw Hats, Admiral Aokiji himself had to admit that the Navy had lost. On the way to Water 7, Luffy repeatedly thanked the Going Merry. It seemed to move to Enies Lobby on its own because there was no one piloting the ship. Not long after, the residents of Water 7 also showed up to welcome the Straw Hats back. At the same time, the Going Merry reached its limit and broke in half. Luffy was extremely panicked and repeatedly begged the shipwrights to save his crewmate. However, this was impossible. Before that, Mayor Iceberg discovered the Going Merry heavily damaged and lying in the scrapyard. It told Iceberg that it wanted to set sail once more. Iceberg was quite surprised. He then decided to repair this strange ship. Not only that, Going Merry also thanked Iceberg before setting sail. This was the first time he had encountered such a wonderful ship after so many years of being a shipbuilder. Luffy understood that it was time to say goodbye to Going Merry here. He then set fire to the ship to bid farewell to his beloved crewmate. Witnessing the Going Merry gradually being burned, all the crew members of the Straw Hats burst into tears in emotion. No one will be able to hold back their tears when seeing this scene, including us. Goodbye, Going Merry. Right after that, Merry suddenly talked to the Straw Hats. He felt very sorry for not being able to continue going with everyone. Even so, he was also very happy to be loved by the crew until now. On that day, time seemed to stop because of the tearful farewell of the Straw Hats with their beloved ship. Returning to the present, Mr. Brook also had to cry because of the magical story of Going Merry. He really wanted to meet it even just once. Merry's incarnation is now in the Thousand Sunny, so until now, it is still following and accompanying the Straw Hats. Even though they can't see each other anymore, they will always remember each other.